Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jennifer Finley. I work for the Alzheimer's Association in the Rhode Island chapter, and it is my pleasure to introduce to you today Patty O'Brien, BS CDP. Patty is a dementia specialist at Hartford Healthcare Center for Healthy Aging, and she's been working with seniors since 1990. Previously, Patty was the North Central Regional Director for the Alzheimer's Association in the Connecticut chapter. In 2015, Patty joined the Hartford Healthcare Center for Healthy Aging, and she helps families and caregivers through coaching and education. We welcome Patty back as a speaker for this year's conference.
So I don't use a microphone very often because I have a very large voice. So if I blow you out of the room, let me know. So welcome. I am Patty O'Brien. I come from you over the border there in Connecticut, but consider Rhode Island my backyard. I grew up in Noank, so Westerly was right down the street for me. Today, if you look at the title, creating moments of success. It's not about creating a whole day, even an hour, even maybe 5 minutes. It's all about the moments. We take moments, put them together, and make a memory. Individuals with a neurocognitive impairment have a hard time putting moments together, so that moment's got to count. So today, as you leave here, I hope that you will have a better understanding of the importance of structuring a day for an individual with dementia, to increase understanding of what to consider is an activity in relation to people with dementia, and to develop an understanding of the sort of emotions that people with dementia may feel when carrying out a purposeful activity. You should know my background. I have a Bachelor of Science in Therapeutic Recreation. I was the fun lady. I walked in your room. We were going to music. We were going on an outing. We were going to bingo. You'll understand that little conversation a little bit better in a few minutes. So why do people need activity? All of us need activity. I'm a big promoter of play. I don't care what your age is. Please continue to play. Activity is essential to human existence, health, well-being. The urge to engage in purposeful and meaningful activity is a basic human drive. This inbuilt motivation does not diminish or disappear as people age. So, what activities do you do? I want you to think about, you don't have to write them down, but think about 5 everyday activities that you have done in the last day or so. What have you done? Maybe you drove here. Maybe you made breakfast. Maybe you played pickleball. That's huge in Connecticut. Is it big here in Rhode Island? It's growing unbelievably. Everywhere I look, there's a new pickleball court. Maybe you went to the gym. Maybe you heard a speaker earlier. What are the 5 activities that you've done in the last couple of days? And then, does your list include a mixture of leisure, work, self-care, providing a balanced lifestyle? Do these activities help you to maintain skills, provide exercise and mental stimulation? Do these activities allow you choice, independence, sense of worth, self-esteem, social inclusion, and a sense of purpose? Now, I'm a rec therapist, so a lot of people think, oh, Patty's going to talk about activities related to recreation. Part of it. But every interaction a person with dementia has is an activity. Even saying hello is an activity. And what do I mean by that? I'm going to move a little bit. The taper in the back's going to be like, get back up there, but hold on. What's your first name? Linda. Let's say Linda, I know each other. I see her at the store down the street. Hey, Linda, good to see you. I can walk. Now, Linda goes, oh, that's that. Yeah. Linda's like, that's that crazy lady I saw over at the Crown Plaza talking about dementia. Her brain works that fast. Her brain click, click, click. Now, let's say she has a neurocognitive impairment, and I'm walking by her. And I go, Linda, good to see you. I keep walking. Oh, by the time she's sitting, right, she said, wait a minute, did I hear my name? Someone's saying, someone calling me? Where did they go? Where are they? I just made a confused person more confused. That is not my goal any day of my life. If you do not have the 2 to 5 seconds to stop, make a connection, make a moment, keep walking. This is a fight I had staff every day. Oh, Patty, what's the big deal? I just walked through the room. Not fair. Not fair for a person's brain who is slowing down. So the next thing I want you to do, I want everyone to close their eyes. I promise I won't do anything to you. I work a lot with staff, and I think they get nervous when I'm going to do something. I want you to close your eyes and count to 20, and when you're done counting, just raise your hand. Ready? Go. When that went off, that was 20 seconds. How many people raised their hand before that alarm went off? Right. A person with dementia, no matter what type it is, can take up to 60 seconds to listen to a question, process it, and give you an answer. But as humans, what do we do when someone doesn't answer your question? We follow up with another question, right? What would you like for breakfast? How about eggs? Would pancakes be better? Would you like some juice this morning? How about some coffee? I'm on question 5. They're on question 1. So ask your question and stop. I tell people all the time, if you hear anything today, please hear this. Slow down. This world goes too fast. So what if this morning you woke up, no hot water in your house? You got a ticket on your way to work, and there's no milk for your coffee. What would you be? Would you be able to control your emotions? Yeah, you might get a little angry, a little frustrated, but we pivot. We're able to do that. Now let's see this scenario. What if you have dementia? You had a frustrating day, and people are asking you things like, don't you remember? You are not sure where you are? Everything seems to be happening so fast. How would you feel? Lost, overwhelmed, frustrated? There's a part of our brain called the amygdala. It's our emotional center. The amygdala works overtime in people with dementia because it's up and in the brain. Dementia starts on the outside and works in, so up and in is music and emotion. So emotions are strong and work overtime well into the end of people's lives. Here's the issue. Those outer lobes sometimes misfeed the emotion and tell it lies. Maybe it's emotion from 40 years ago, but they think it's today. We're going to talk more about that. An individual with dementia is less able to control or cope with their frustrations. They don't pivot well. Okay? So daily routine. Now, when I first started working in assisted living, 25 plus years ago, I can remember every doctor would say to me, people with dementia cannot learn, they cannot learn, they cannot learn, memory is impaired, they cannot learn, they cannot learn. And I started working in this small assisted living, and most of my residents were Italian Catholic, and they'd all go in for breakfast and sit at the same chair every day. Like, that's something learned. Then after breakfast got done, they would get up and walk into the TV room because Mass was going to be turned on at 10 o'clock. How did they know that? We've come to learn that repetition, muscle memory, and motor, after so many times, can start to learn. But it's that cognitive memory that is not working correctly. So an individual with dementia will need a caregiver's assistance to organize a day. Structured activities can often reduce agitation, improve mood and emotions, and planning activities work best when you continually explore, experiment, and adjust. Okay. So as dementia progresses, the abilities of the person will change. So this is a forever changing, forever looking at, forever reevaluating over and over again. What do I need to change now? Where are we in this journey of dementia? How do I get through this? What do I do? What do? Call the Alzheimer's Association helpline. Say, I'm struggling here, can you help me? So what do people with dementia get from an activity? Activities may be more important to their psychosocial well-being than physical and social environment. They have a potential to enhance quality of life, promote strength, reduce rate of cognitive decline, enhance relationships and communications, draw on interests, and enhance self-esteem. So right here is, I have a picture of a New York Times. You'll see some funny pictures up there. That's a clue for me. It's a visual clue for me. I had a woman move into my community, and every morning after breakfast, she got very upset, very agitated. We're like, why is she so upset? So I sat down with her daughter. I go, tell me about your mom's routine. She goes, oh, she got up every morning, had breakfast, and she'd sit down and she read the New York Times. But Patty, she doesn't understand the New York Times. She doesn't know what she's reading anymore, so I stopped getting it. I said, do me a favor. Do you get it? She goes, yeah. I go, bring in a day-old one tomorrow. So she did. After breakfast, the aide handed her the paper. She sat right down and went through every page. Because that was her routine. That's what she knew. That's what was predictable in that moment. She's like, this is normal. Because nothing else is right now. So when we can do that for someone, we're giving them back a sense of self. I know who you are. I know what you like. And we're going to give you that so you feel comfortable. We always want to draw on interest, enhance those relationships. This is one of my favorite photographs. So often people see my title is a dementia specialist, so people will say to me, oh, all of your clients have some form of memory loss. Not necessarily. That may come later, depending on what type of dementia it is. Many do start with memory as the main concern. But if we look at that brain, each lobe has a different role. So frontal lobes control behavior, planning, decision-making. The left side, initiating activities. This is one of the things I hear from families all the time. My mother will sit in that chair, won't move. She does nothing all day. The part of the brain that tells her to get up, get going, get moving, or what the next step is broken. And you're going to hear me use that word today, broken, and I'll tell you why. I had the opportunity to work with 9-year-old boys. I don't know why they were all boys, but they were all boys in the room. And this little boy's waving at me. And I said, Rocco, is there something you want to say? He goes, I know what Alzheimer's is. I said, what is it, buddy? He goes, it means the brain is broken. And I thought, that kid is brilliant. We need to put him on television. Because as adults, we're not getting it sometimes. On the right, its impairment leads to lack of social graces and sexual inhibition. The occipital lobe is all about the vision, how they're seeing things. Parietal lobes, body control, space. On the left is sequencing body movement, so walking, putting my hand through a jacket or through a leg on a pair of pants. On the right is that spatial function, understanding how parts make wholes. This is where I talk a lot about with my families about driving, right? Visual, spatial. How far is something? How close is something? So I ask them once a week, go and walk around the car. Look at side view mirrors. They stick out a little bit. So I get a call one day, the day after I did a presentation, and the daughter is cracking up. I said, what happened? She goes, oh, I went over to Dad's today. I said, and what happened? She goes, oh, I went and looked at the car. I said, and what happened? She goes, duct tape fixes everything. Her dad had knocked off his side view mirror and duct tape. He took care of it. He made it right. And when she said, Dad, what happened? He goes, oh, somebody hit me in the parking lot. I had to fix it. They're not looking to lie to you. They're not trying to fake you out. They are faking it to make it. Okay? Temporal lobe really is memory, language, understanding, memory formation, orientation to place. Typically, in Alzheimer's, it is the hippocampus and the temporal lobes that are hit first. Your hippocampus, and it's not here, but it's your working memory. Information gets here, and it goes up here and gets stored. Here's the issue. Information gets here, doesn't go anywhere, because this isn't working right. It's broken. So now, if I don't put something in my filing cabinet, I can't go back and take it out. So when I talk about early stage, and we'll talk about that in a minute, I'm talking about it doesn't become a memory. I'm not talking about memory loss. I'm talking about that new information does not become a memory. If it doesn't get stored, I can't go in and pull it back out. All right. One of my favorite children's books is called Grandma's Cobwebs by Dr. Anne Franti. She is a doctor of education, elementary education, and this is a page from her book. Grandma puts a slice of pizza on a paper plate and sticks it in the oven. Aunt Sue grabs that plate just as it catches on fire. She looks sad when she asks Grandma, "Do you see why it isn't safe for you to live alone anymore?" Grandma sets down her cup of tea and argues, "Fires can never happen at my house. I don't have any paper plates." I call that Alzheimer's logic. I always have an answer for you. And has anyone ever gotten an answer and you walk away and go, "Wait, who's right?" No, it's me, right? So Grandma doesn't understand that Aunt Sue is talking about other dangers too. I realize how important it is for someone to be with her all the time. But again, one of my favorite children's books out there. All right, so how may a person with dementia have difficulty performing steps? Orientation, what day is it? What's the weather? What do I wear? Although lately I'm not sure what to wear out of the house either. Memory, they're not remembering things. So the first two areas when I talk to a family, when they say my individual has memory issues, taking medications and finances. So my two areas of concern. One, if they don't take their medication, they set themselves up for higher blood pressure if they have a blood pressure issue. Then we look at a stroke, then we look at a heart attack. If they have a thyroid issue, doing that thyroid. Finances, not paying bills, paying them too often. I just had a gentleman get back a check from his cell phone company for $3,200. His son-in-law called the phone company and said, "Why did we just receive this check?" He thought it was a joke, like he thought it was a scam. He's like, "I'm not cashing that, it's a scam." He called the phone company. It said, "No, for some reason your father-in-law goes online every couple days and pays his phone bill." He's probably paying it, put the bill down, walk away, doesn't remember paying it, sees it again. "Oh my God, I got to pay this. I don't want to forget." So he pays it again and then just puts it down, doesn't get rid of it, walks away, doesn't get laid down his memory, sees that bill again. That's that visual cue. Visual cues are so important to think about when we're talking about dementia. That motivation, initiation. I also facilitate some support groups, and I was sitting one day and I had a group of about 10 folks, and a young man in his 30s came in and sat down, and we said, "What brings you here?" And he goes, "My mom just got diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease." And we said, "What was your first clue?" Well, again, I worked in Rocky Hill, Connecticut, very Italian, very Catholic community. She goes, "My mother stopped going to church. She went to Mass every single day." And the church called him and said, "Is your mom okay?" He goes, "What do you mean? She hasn't been in church." His entire life, his mother said to him, "I have to go to church today or I'm going to hell." That was her mantra. She went to church every day. So he went to his mother and said, "Mom, why didn't you go to church today?" "I was tired. I wasn't feeling my best." Makes sense. Answered the question correctly, got out of the situation, and the son went away. So then phone call comes, and a couple of days later, "Is your mother okay?" She's like, "What are you talking about? She hasn't been in church." Goes back to mom. "Mom, why aren't you going to church?" She goes, "I don't have to go to church anymore." He goes, "What?" He goes, "The young people have to go. They're all going to hell." And he was like, "Well, that might be true, but that's not my mother." And that's the key. That's not my mother. That's the key to that phrase, right? So recognition of objects. May look at something. Somebody's trying to get a hold of me. Sorry. Whoops. Initiation, the part of the brain that tells you, get up, get going, get moving. Not working. It's a problem, right? Planning and sequencing. That's that frontal part of the brain that does all that good planning and sequencing for you. Not working. So what do we do every day that's planning and sequencing? Waking up. I wake up. What do I start doing? Planning my day. Sequencing. First, I'm going to take a shower. Second, I'm going to have a cup of coffee. Then maybe have some breakfast. Then I'm going to, get ready for the day. Do my hair. Do some makeup. Put on some clothes. We plan and sequence all day long. So this is an area of concern. Spatial awareness. Again, where are things in space to me? Sitting in a chair, like for me, I see these chairs and I cringe only because I work with seniors. Where are the arms? Right? Because I need for them to push off. I need for them to be comfortable. I need for them to be there. Coordination. We work a lot with police because sometimes police will see people with dementia and think they're drunk. because their coordination's off. Attention, concentration, risk awareness, and problem solving. Right? So these are all things that are a concern. Do you think, and no one has to answer this question, but do you think if the fire alarm went off in your house, your individual with dementia would know, one, what that sound was, and two, what to do next? I can't hear you, sorry. She does now? Okay. But does she know what to do next? Like, it's okay to hear it and be like, what is that? That's loud, I'm not sure. Or she may say, oh, that's the fire alarm. Does she know to get out? Does she know that next step? Okay. Yeah. So these are the things that we see a lot with folks with dementia. They don't know the next step. Their brain doesn't tell them what to do next. So what would you do in this setting? What would you all do? Think about it. You're in a room with other people. You cannot talk to them because they all speak a foreign language. Chairs in the room were lined up around the room. Nothing was in the room to read or look at. What would you do? Some people go, I'd fall asleep. I'd get up and leave. I would try to converse with someone next to me. Now, you're in a room with tables and chairs. There's magazines on them. There are books around, decks of cards, other games that you could play alone. What would you do in this setting? So think of the person who has a dementia, who can't plan or organize, and they really look at things visually to, look at that, take it, look at that, take it. If they're in a room with nothing, they're not sure the next step. If we provide and put things out for them, they have better success with that visual. Okay. So it is all about our approach. Help get the activity started, because again, a lot of times that part of the brain doesn't kick in. It's not moving. Offer support, concentrate on process, not the result. Be flexible. One of the things that I always try to have people think about, because someone can't do one part of an activity, don't scrap the whole thing. What part can they do? So I have a woman in Farmington, Connecticut, and she is the mother and grandmother, and her job is to clear the table after dinner. She loves to do it, but then she started dropping plates and dropping cups and dropping things and breaking them. So the daughter called me in tears. She's like, I say to my mother, Mom, I really don't want you breaking any more china or my false craft, which is not supposed to break, and different things. And I said, do me a favor. She said, what? I go to the dollar store and buy plastic. She's like, oh my God, I never thought of that. I go, just go. And then Mom can still pick up. If she drops it, it's going to be messy, but she still has a purpose. She's still part of the family. She still wanted to be there and do that. Now, one of my favorite days working in Rocky Hill with all my Italian ladies, they said they wanted to make meatballs. When I make meatballs, I make 30, maybe 50. Oh no. My ladies make 500 to 1,000 meatballs. I was like, you what? Went to my kitchen, and she said, oh, you can make 1,000 meatballs. We mixed them in the morning, and we rolled them in the afternoon, and then our kitchen cooked them. But they were part of the process, and that's what it's all about. Conversation, hard sometimes, right? What did you do today? We walk in the room, and what do we say? How was your day? I'm not sure. What'd you have for lunch? I didn't eat. Right? Did you take your meds? Absolutely, I took my medications. Then we go look at the med tray. No, you didn't. They are not lying to you. They've always taken their meds. Of course I took my meds. In their mind, they're thinking, of course I did. Why would I forget? And are you accusing me of not doing what I've always done? And now you're calling me a liar. So now I'm angry. There's that emotion. There's that amygdala kicking in. Don't criticize or correct. Encourage self-expression. Involve persons through conversations. If I'm in a group and there's more than two people, so it's myself, maybe my husband, and a person with dementia, every time I'm talking to that individual, I'm stating their name every time. Michael, and I get their attention. What do you think about the Boston Red Sox? And see what I get for a reaction. If I am talking again with my husband a little bit and I go back to him, I'm going to, Michael, because I need his attention. It's so easy for them to get distracted. Somebody's walking by, there's a noise, something's happening. We don't know. We need to bring them back to the conversation. As groups get bigger, it gets harder for the person with dementia to follow a conversation. There's noise all over the place, there's things happening, overwhelming. And then, this is one of my favorites, substitute an activity for a behavior. I had a gentleman, in one of the assisted livings I worked, we had absolutely beautiful mini grand pianos. And they had that shellac finish, so shiny, right? Everybody that walks by left what? Fingerprints. And one of my gentlemen, that ticked him off to no end. And he would get angry and he would go after people. He would aggressively go after them. And I was like, okay, we got to do something, you guys. I went and got him mittens to dust. Every time someone left a fingerprint, he went over there, he's like, oh, I got it, it's gone, see, beautiful. I'm like, thank you so much. Our pianos looked amazing. It took away the behavior. And that's what I'm always trying to do. Okay. So before making a plan, consider the person's likes, dislikes, strengths, abilities, and interests. We call these habits of a lifetime. What is your habit of a lifetime? Anybody always shower in the morning? And does it feel funny when you don't shower in the morning? So my dad always showered at night. My dad grew up on a farm. They took their bath on Saturday night. Then he went into the Navy. He was scheduled for 7 p.m. on the submarine that he lived on. After 20 years, he came home to 2 preteen boys and a brand new baby girl. He again took his baths at night, or showers at night. He would eat dinner, watch the evening news, take his showers, go into his pajamas, and go into the TV room, usually watching some sporting event. Now let's say my dad's in his 90s and he goes into a nursing home and they decide, oh, we're going to schedule Mr. Borden for 10 a.m. on Friday morning. Is that going to work? Probably not, right? Because after I take a shower, I always put my pajamas on. Why are you putting my clothes on me? This doesn't make sense to me. This isn't right. So knowing someone's past, knowing someone's routine is so important. How the person used to structure their day, what time of day the person functions best. Now, most people with dementia, 10 to 2:30, maybe 3 o'clock is their prime time. Not everyone, but most. Before 10 o'clock, they're still shaking out the cobwebs, trying to ground themselves. After 3, I've been thinking a lot all day long. And don't ask me more questions. And as adult children, when do we show up? After work. It's probably the worst time for someone with dementia to have a visitor. It's hard. So please go in with an agenda, or please go in with an activity bag, and we'll talk about some of those in a minute. We need to add 20 minutes to any activity. If a shower took a half an hour, it's going to take you 40 to 50 minutes now. Dinner, if it took you a half an hour, it's going to take you now 50 minutes. We need to add that time. I was doing another presentation one day, and there was an older woman in the back, tears just coming down her face. And I said, what brought on your tears? And she goes, do you know how much I yell at my husband trying to get him to the doctors? She goes, I never added in extra time. She goes, if I knew that, I think I would have avoided a lot of a heartache in getting him out of the house and into the car. Add in 20 minutes. Regular times for waking up, going to bed, this is part of that routine, is especially helpful if the person with dementia experiences sleep issues or sundowning, which so many do. So early stage. Some of these folks aren't even diagnosed. Some are still driving. Some are still working at this point. May place greater significance on typical everyday activities in order to maintain a sense of contribution. So I had a woman, she lived in her own apartment in Newington, Connecticut. She was independent in her own apartment. She had no issues, no concerns. Her kids and their mom went to Cape Cod for 2 weeks. Their first week was an absolute disaster. She didn't know where the bathroom was. She didn't know where to get a cup of coffee. She didn't even know how to get a glass of water. So everywhere she turned, she didn't know what to do, and that's when frustration played, that's when anxiety played, that's when she became overwhelmed with what she was doing. The individual can plan working towards achieving a goal, but they may need direction. Directions need to be simple. We go from A to Z. How many of us go into the room and say, okay, it's time for your shower? Shower Z. Shower's down here. I'm over here with a person with a neurocognitive impairment. I want to go A to B. What's the first thing I need for them to do? Stand up. Will you please stand up? Come with me. We're going to head down the hall. And as I'm doing that, we're doing it. But if I walk in and say, okay, you're going to have a shower today, what do I usually hear? No, right? Or I've already taken one. Or you're here during the day. I take mine at night. They're good, you guys. They're good. The individual may be able to carry out familiar tasks in familiar settings, but your directions need to be broken down. Okay. A large social gathering may be overwhelming, but the person may be able to interact more successfully in smaller groups at this time. So activities may not need to be as structured, in a structured group. Task-oriented, such as washing up, household chores, they can be pretty independent here at this point. Setting a table, folding laundry, cleanup tasks, preparing food are examples of purposeful activities that they may enjoy at this point. So moderate. This is usually when I get the phone calls in my job, is when people move into the moderate stage of the disease process. Participate in activities that can relate to, such as reminiscing about a time that they can recall. So I told you I live in Connecticut. Connecticut is a very divided state. We have Red Sox, we have Yankees, and we have some Mets, but very divided in where you're from. And so when I go in and I'm talking to a gentleman over the age of 85, my first question is, who do you root for? And they'll say, if they say the Yankees, I'm like, I gotta go. And I start walking out, they're like, no, don't go, it's okay, I'll talk to you. I'm like, no, well, I don't talk to Yankee fans. And that starts my humor, and that starts a social interaction. So I'm not walking in and going, so how are you feeling today? What'd you do today? Did you take your pills? How are you seeing me right now? That doesn't work. We always try everything socially first. That works for me in Connecticut. We're very divided on that's why that little baseball's there. Very divided on that. Participation is more concerned with the process of taking rather than the end result, experiencing growing difficulties in perceiving and understanding the world of others. So this is where you might be telling them a story. Maybe a child got hit by a car and they have no emotional reaction to it. You are visibly upset. You may not even know the child, but you saw it on TV and you're like, oh, that's so shocking. And you say something to the individual with a neurocognitive impairment and they go, oh, really? No reaction. That brain's not telling them. The ability to sequence a task this is when it really becomes impaired, and more complex activities need to be directed one step at a time. So, rummaging in sensory bags. So I have my little friends here. Let me get them. So I told you I was a rec therapist many moons ago. And every spring, I would do a program about the spring birds. So I went in to do a program, and I stood there, and I talked about the robin, I talked about the cardinal, and I talked about the blue jay. I just used my words, and my residents were like this. And I was like, well, that didn't work well. So I went to the Audubon Society, and I bought some friends. And I brought out the robin. And a woman goes, springtime. I go, you bet, right? When we see the robin, we think spring is around the corner. And they pull those fat, juicy things. I go, are you talking about the worms? Yeah, the worms, yes. I said, okay. Then I brought out the blue jay. And they go, oh, that's the mean one. I go, he can be. Yeah, he kicks off the little ones on the tube. I go, you're talking about the feeder. Yeah, the feeder. And then I brought out my cardinal, and this one doesn't sing, but I have one that sings. And one of my gentlemen goes, that son of a bitch used to wake me up every morning. So when I just used my words, no comprehension. Words will become their enemies. Please hear that. Their words will become the individual with dementia's enemies. Please use visual cues along with touch cues. Use your voice, but you want to hit as many senses as you can to connect. These really helped me. So encourage the person to grasp objects, explore them, a sensory bag filled with things that have curiosity and value. This can include beaded necklaces, furs, scarves, cotton wool, stuffed animals, lots of different things. One of my favorite days, I was sitting in a room with a bunch of residents, And I had on the table the name of teams. So it was baseball season. You might already have a clue. I love baseball. But on there, it said New York. And you opened it up, and they go, well, Yankees, of course. I said, yep, New York Yankees. That's one. New York. Mets. Yep, you're right. But then I had cards with the name of the team on it. And I said, Dodgers. And one of the guys goes, that's the day Brooklyn died. And I was like, I get it, Ralph. And I said, well, they moved. He goes, yep, in the middle of the night. For him, that's an emotional memory. He grew up in Brooklyn. That's an emotional memory for him. He's holding on to that. That's a day he'll never forget. But those little cues, and then I said Braves, and they all went Boston. I'm like, ooh, that's been a long time since. Good thing I know as much about baseball as I do. I said, well, they moved. They go, where they? And one guy goes, I know, Milwaukee. I go, well, yeah, they went there next. I go, they moved again. And they were like, nope. No grasp of where they were now. They're in Atlanta, of course. Reminiscing, bringing back. Like with my dad at the end of his life, he was very confused. If you started talking about a submarine, it was over. You could talk for hours. He remembered everything about that engine room. It was unbelievable. So into the late stage, and really this is where movement is reflex response to stimulus. Speech has generally disappeared. So the individual with neurocognitive impairment is not using speech at all because, again, words become their enemies. Direct stimulation raises person's self-awareness. So look at the eyes, look at the mouth, look at the brightness. Warm and reassuring tone and volume of voice are vital to establishing rapport. And use primitive reflex, smile, waving, and handshake. So I want to tell you a story about a client of mine who was at the end of her life. Her name was also Patty, like mine. And I knew her sister very well. I knew Patty relatively well. And her sister called me from Florida and said, I just got a call from the hospice nurse. Patty's transitioning. I said, okay, I'm going over to see her. I know you're in Florida. She's like, Patty, I'll be there tomorrow. I said, okay, I'm going over. So I went over. You all should just know, I'm very comfortable with people who are at the end of their life. It's something that I have no problem being in that moment. So I went in, and her daughter was sitting here, and her niece was sitting here. I knew them very well. Patty was in bed, and with her eyes closed. And I went over, and I laid down next to her, and I put her over my chest. And her daughter says, she's not responding anymore. I said, it's okay. I said, Patty, the last time I was here, we were talking about when you used to skinny dip on Block Island. She goes, oh yeah. Daughter's like, what just happened? I said, and we were talking about fins. If anybody's been to Block Island, fins, it was this great place. You walked off the boat, and there was a little place right there. I go, and you put the spoon in their chowder, and it didn't move. It was so thick. She goes, Again, her daughter's like, what just happened? I'm like, you're too far away. Anybody know how much your brain weighs, just your brain? A normal, everyday brain, what does it weigh? Weighs about 3 pounds. When someone has Alzheimer's disease, more than 5-6 years, what do you think that brain could weigh? About 1.5 pounds. They're losing half of their brain mass. So I have 2 lungs. You take out one of my lungs, how's my breathing? It's impaired. My favorite muscles on my body are my hamstrings. My hamstrings are very strong. I do a lot of squatting. They help me get up and down the toilet. That's what I tell all the young people at the gym. If you take out half my hamstrings at each of my leg, how am I going to get off that toilet? It's going to be very difficult. We can look at someone. We don't know how much damage is in that brain. We don't know where that damage is in that brain, but we know there's damage in that brain. So we need to connect to make a successful moment. Knowing their name, saying their name, saying your name. So sometimes for an adult child, that feels funny. Hi, Mom, it's Patty. I say Patty O'Brien. Hi, Mom, it's Patty O'Brien. She'll go, hello, Patty O'Brien, it's your mother. But giving your name, because we know in the world of specifically Alzheimer's, one of the first areas of the brain damage is nouns, naming things. Like I said, I never heard them say Robin, never heard them say that word, but they could describe it. So we're listening to the description, and we come up with the word. to make that a successful moment. So whenever you're approaching someone, you say their name, right? When a teacher said your name, what did you know? You better be listening. We learned that at a very early age. Say my name, I better clock in. Smiling, waving, handshakes, touch is so important at this point of the disease, more so than anything else. Now, my other thing that's not here is music. Music I call the great connector, the absolute great connector. Here's the important part to hear. The most important music to someone is from the age of 15 to 25. So what music were your individuals listening to from 15 to 25? Me, you better put some Bon Jovi on. Right? Just an example of music. I had a woman in my facility who had lost the ability to speak English. She went back to Swedish. No English. She had lost her ability to speak English at all. And all of a sudden I heard this, and a blood-curdling scream. I turned the corner, definitely a broken hip or pelvis. One leg was much shorter than the other. And I was like, You may observe someone with dementia trying to get away from pain, getting up off the floor, trying to get away from it. When it's part of them, they don't know it. That's that visual spatial. Is it in me? Or if I move away from this spot, will I get rid of that pain? So she's trying to get up. And I'm like, please stay down, please stay down. And she's looking at me. And so first thing I did was I laid down next to her. Because when I'm like this, I'm in a position of power. I'm also a big woman, right? So, like right now, how are you feeling? She like automatically, she went like this. Like, holy crap! Just a reminder that assisted living I worked in Rocky Hill, most women were 5 foot or under and weighed 100 pounds, and here I come. So they were like, holy crap. So I laid down with her. That settled her down a little bit. And then again, she's trying to get up, she's trying to get up. And in my head, I'm like, what brings her safety? What brings her peace? What brings her in the moment? What's going to help her? And then it clicked. She was a minister's daughter who played the organ. She was a wife of a minister that played the organ. So then I'm going through my head, what hymns do I know? What hymns do I know? What hymns do I know? Anything in English would not have worked for me. I went back to 3rd grade. And I learned a song that I went home every week and said to my mother, I hate this song because no one knows what I'm singing. And she goes, no, they'll know. They'll know. And I'm like, I don't know, Mom. I laid there that day and I looked in her eyes and I said, Dona nobis pacem pacem, Dona nobis pacem. She goes, I stopped singing, she started screaming. My nurse goes, keep singing. That's all I remembered of that song. I felt I sang it for 3 hours. They said I only sang it for 7 minutes until they came and took her off. And she did have a broken hip, unfortunately. But we did get it fixed. But you will find sometimes, because of that spatial issue, and that's a warning sign. So if you go back to the warning signs from the Alzheimer's Association, one of them is visual spatial relationships. So now we're talking late stage. How much damage is in there? They're going to try to get away from that damage, or that pain, I should say. This is when we really talk about sensory activities. Develop a range of activities that include all 5 senses. Touch, taste, hearing, smell, sight, aromatherapy, massage. It's not the end product that's important, but the opportunity to engage in this activity. Okay. Some people use dolls, soft toys. If you have a woman that was I had one woman, she was a mother of 11. We gave her a doll, and she was in heaven because she had been her mom her whole life. And that's what she did. Animals. Here's the thing, not everyone likes animals. I love this last line that we put in here. Not everyone likes animals, and that's what you need to know. I can tell you lots of things to do, right? But it is, who is the person in front of you? What do they like? What do they dislike? What makes them happy? What ticks them off? We need to know that. So, what people with dementia early on say about activity is through activity that life has meaning and purpose. I like to help and have value. Activity is important distraction from my negative feelings. This was a group that I used to run at the Alzheimer's Association, and this is what my folks told me. It was an early stage group. So what's the challenge? Right? I talked about routine, how important that is. Well, guess what? Life gets in the way. Maybe somebody's sick. Maybe somebody needs to go to the doctor's. Maybe there's a special event. Maybe it's even a happy thing. Life, those disruptions. Getting someone to say yes. I told you earlier, I'm a rec therapist. I was the fun lady. I was taking to singing, whatever we were doing. I would walk in and say, would you? They go, no. What do you mean no? You don't even know what I'm asking you. I could say, would you like $1 million? They're like, wow, $1 million. When we ask a question, we sing, right? Would you? We flip it up. When we make a statement, time for dinner, come with me. Boom, 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 boom. So questions, we usually, would you? With statements. And if they don't really want to do it, guess what? They're not gonna. But a lot of times, it's amazing to me when I would go in and say, I have a great entertainer today. I have a seat for you. Come with me. And they're listening, and they're like, come with me. And they start standing up and moving. Because they're just listening to the words. There's that 20 minutes to any activity I talked about earlier. All right, so this beautiful picture. If you have staff coming into your home, if you're moving someone into an assisted living or into a nursing home, please do me a favor. On any pictures in that room, write on the back who's in that picture. Because here's why. I talked about nouns. This is a picture. There's a young woman and an older woman sitting with a picture just like this. And the young woman says, oh, is this your wedding day? And she said, yeah. Because yes, no questions are pretty easy to answer for a very long time. Yes. Oh, is this your husband? Yes. What's his name? I must be the worst wife in the whole world. I don't remember. Next frame. Same two people. Is this your wedding? Yes. Is this your husband? Yes. Is this Tom? Yes, that's my Tommy. I loved him so much. It's in here, folks. We got to unlock it. We got to give that information. Don't hold back. Don't quiz. You're setting them up to fail. We don't want to do that. All right, so modifying environment, removing hazardous materials, sometimes placing scrapbooks, photo albums, old magazines, accessible for people to reminisce. I hear from families all the time, I'm having a hard time visiting when I go to see my mom. I just don't know what to do. It's so hard now. Come prepared. I'll tell you one of the hardest things for me. I was very involved in a church at one time, and our church kids wanted to go and do visits. And they wanted to use the Bible, the Message, which is in very everyday language. I'm like, you guys, that's not going to work. They're like, what do you mean? If you've ever read the 23rd Psalm out of there, I'd be like, what is that? It doesn't sound at all what we're used to. So I had to convince them we needed to bring either King James or maybe a more modern version. But it was hard for the kids because they liked this new version. It's very easy. But for someone who's 80, 90 years old, it didn't make sense. All right. So we put these up here because moments can go, whoa, what are you doing? Moments can go very bad, very quick. All right. So if we look at this picture over here. Laxative or Shibar? Do they look any different? And what is the flavor of the laxative? It's chocolate. Now, I had a client actually in his own home. He ate a whole box of laxatives. And then we started what we call the insults. Ate the box of laxatives, insult number 1. Started vomiting and having diarrhea, insult number 2. Then landed in the emergency room, insult number 3. Landed in the hospital. He was so dehydrated, his kidneys started shutting down. In the hospital for 4 days. Moved to short-term rehab, insult number 5. That's an insult on the brain because you are changing the level of moisture in the brain, the level of water that they need in that brain. You're changing their environment 3 different times, and it just leads to more and more confusion. So the other picture we always like to show is this one up here. A client of mine, Michelle Wyman, that I work with, she had a gentleman that his wife was up painting a ceiling in the bathroom, and the husband had an obsession with dry eye. He kept going up. I need my eye drops. I need my eye drops. She's like, please give me 5 seconds, five minutes to finish this. And he'd go, okay. He'd be back in 30 seconds or less. I need my eye drops. I need my eye drops. So she's like, fine. They're down on the Lazy Susan. Well, so was the super glue. And all of a sudden he comes up and he's like, something's wrong. She's like, what did you put in your eyes? He's like, I don't know. Off to the hospital they went. Luckily it hadn't totally hardened and it was okay. Also here's 5 different things. Some you can drink, some you cannot. We find that sometimes people with dementia, when they drink something that doesn't taste good, they drink more to see if it will taste differently. We usually spit it out. For some reason they drink more. But what's the visual cue here? What's this? It's a glass. What do we do with a glass? We drink it. There's your visual cue. Okay. So how might we maximize potential? Recognizes familiar faces but can't place them. Introduce yourself by name every single time. And it does seem funny for a husband or wife or an adult child to a parent to say, hi Mom, it's Patty. Hi Steve, it's your wife Patty. But we're going to give them that. And they might say to you, I know who you are. It's okay. My friend Carol, I went to pick her up every morning for breakfast. I'd walk in, I go, good morning, Carol, it's Patty O'Brien. It's time for breakfast. We're going to walk down. Okay, let's go. She's like, I know who you are. I can tell by the sound of your voice. So then she got a little angry about it. And I was like, oh, maybe I am insulting her, and I don't want to do that. So the next day I went in, and I said, good morning, Carol, it's time for breakfast. Let's head down. She said, okay. Halfway down the hall, what did I hear? Who are you? I said, I'm sorry, Carol, it's Patty O'Brien. She goes, oh, I know. I can tell by the sound of your voice. She had that phrase. That was her phrase to say, I'm okay. But she wasn't okay. Able to wash self, but doesn't know where or what with. We're going to set up, escort to the bathroom, offer to fill the basin, give soap and cloth. When I work with staff and I said, when you're doing care, please hand a washcloth to the person with dementia. Don't do it all yourself. They're not going to do a good job most of the time. They'll miss spots, but let them be part of the process. Able to put on most clothes, but gets them muddled about order, putting them out in sequence and necessary, offer those verbal prompts.